And we're online. Great. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks, everyone, for coming out this morning. Is everyone having a great time at the conference so far? I feel the same way. It is so good to be back with people, back with old friends, learning new things. So it's wonderful to be here, and thanks for joining us this morning. We're going to talk about the topic today of building a mission-driven brand, and we're going to try and unpack what that means. There's really no company out there that isn't claiming to be mission-driven right now, but what does that actually mean, and how can you actually get your employees and your customers to align with what you're trying to do? So we're going to have, I hope, a great conversation. I have a wonderful set of panelists. As a quick introduction, I'm Adam Freed. I'm a managing partner at GSV. Spent most of my career actually on the operating side of the business, running international product at Google, then as the COO of Etsy and the CEO of a company called Teachers Pay Teachers. So all in different ways, mission-driven brands, and this is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. I'm going to go do introductions going this way, but Harriet said she doesn't want to talk first, so I'll just introduce you, and then I'm just giving you a hard time.
Don't ask me a tough question.
No tough questions first?
Not first.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Well, this is not a tough question. You're Harriet Seitler.
Well done, yes.
Okay.
Is that a good answer?
Yes. The Chief Marketing Officer at Cours Hero, and you have a long history also as having worked for the Oprah show, and so you really understand a great deal about mission and storytelling, and excited to hear from you. Anything you want to share about briefly your work at Cours Hero?
It's mission-driven.
Fantastic. That was both brief and on point. Amazing. Scott Parish is the CEO of Hireguide, a wonderful new company that's helping to bring to, you describe best how you would describe Hireguide so I don't butcher it.
We're making interviews fairer and making that more accessible to everyone.
Great. Adrian Ridner, who's the founder and CEO of Studycom. Maybe you would also share a bit about Study.com in your work.
Yeah, we're an online learning platform from K-12 through college, and we're bringing equity both to students and educators with the work that we do.
Excellent. Jessica Lindl is the head of global education at Unity. And talk a little bit about your work there, please.
I run education and impact at Unity. Unity, if you're not aware of it, is where most of the world's video games and AR and VR experiences are made and published on.
And Julio Cotorruelo, who is the CEO of Domestika, which is an amazing now global company where people can learn to sort of learn more about their creative pursuits, but you'll describe it better.
No better, that's for sure. Thank you. Yeah, we are an online learning community for creative people. And just basically, we are in many places in the world, and we're happy to be here.
Fantastic. So I think the first thing we should try and do is define terms. What do we mean by mission? I've heard really, as I said earlier, you know, companies in every industry are now trying to sell themselves as mission-driven. So for all of you, what does it mean to be a mission-driven brand? And let's go, Julio, from you backwards this way. What does it mean to be a mission-driven brand?
That's the tough question, just for starting. I believe is when you connect the goals of the company with the true goals of the human species or something like that. You know, that's my approach.
To build on that, the mission is the why, and it's embedded in every decision that you're making, and agreeing that I think it's really understanding how you can use the power of your people, your products, and your purpose to shift the world to a better place.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the way I think about it is, you know, from the genesis of a company, sort of the philosophy, the founding values, really speak to the mission, and then when you do that, your product is really your impact, and that's the way I look at it.
Your product is your impact. That's great. That's a wonderful way to think about it, sort of measurability of what you're doing, right? Is if your mission is really landing.
Exactly. And I think you're delivering it by the work and what you're delivering to your customers every day. You're making a difference. And that, I think, is true impact. A lot of companies can make donations, and that's great. That might be socially responsible, but that's different than being a mission-driven brand.
I want to come back to that later because I think that there's a lot of talk right now about, you know, corporate social responsibility and ESG and sustainability and mission and purpose, and we hear all these terms, and to me they start to run together. So let's finish hearing from you, and then let's go and try and push ourselves even more on what does it mean to be mission driven versus any of the other many good things companies might aspire to be.
Yeah, I think mission-driven brands, it's a mindset about using your brand voice and your brand experience to communicate that why or that impact, as opposed to a what. So a traditional brand, wants to say, what it is. I think a mission-driven brand wants to use that voice to say why.
I agree, and I think there's a vision, which is the why, and the mission is the how we're going to get there. And I think one of the things that distinguishes real mission-driven companies that you're talking about is your product, is your impact. I agree, and the idea of meaning behind what you're doing. And if you're delivering meaning that actually connects with people and has an impact on their lives, I think it also has an impact on your culture and the why of what people are doing, going to work every day.
So when let's ask how we use the term mission-driven brand. So we can feel free to go out of order here. Do you lead with your employees and your customers saying, "Hey, we're a mission-driven brand"? And do you think that your employees and your customers know? And let's actually separate those and start first with customers. Do your customers know you're a mission-driven brand? And let me go further and say, and share a tale from school. When I was the COO of Etsy, we were very convinced that we were a platform that was for artisans to do great work, and that our customers were people who loved great artisanal work. And what we found was that our customers wanted great personalized gifts and relationship, but actually, they wanted something different than what our employees wanted. And so then there was a moment of reconciliation of how does our mission relate to both of these two somewhat now different constituencies? So starting with your customers, do your customers care that you're mission driven at Course Hero?
I'd say that probably skews in a couple different ways. There are a lot of people who we're a study resource platform, probably in some ways similar to Studycom. And, we're really committed to creating access for underrepresented students, people that don't, traditionally go to campus, that are, dealing with many, many other kinds of demands, et cetera. Those people, the older students, people who are juggling lots of different kinds of pressures, who are not really typical students, who are now really the majority of students, in America for sure. I think those people recognize what we're doing, and they appreciate it that there is, a support system that's available to them 24/7 that they can access without having to spend a lot of money or even be able to access it for free. Does the typical 20-year-old, who's in a frat on a campus look at Course Hero that way? Probably not. So we have work to do, I think, to continue to extend our mission across all of our users.
Well, but you're pushing on an interesting point, and I want to ask others to follow up on it, which is, your employees and your company needs a mission to understand what its North Star is. Mm-hmm. But do your customers need to know what your North Star is? And go ahead.
What I think is, no, they don't. But I think what drives a mission-driven brand, company, et cetera, is trust, right? So to the degree that you show up with a point of view, with service to numbers of different kinds of consumers in different ways, that actually does have some meaning and impact, as you said. That is, to me, what drives a mission-driven brand. And so whether you say it or not, it's more about what you do than what you say.
Scott.
I think the who cares question is a good one, and it's an issue of segmentation. So I used to be at LinkedIn before I started this company. We used the economic graph to do the world's largest study of purpose at work and try and uncover some data around this kind of segmentation. And the way that we looked at it is that there's sort of three core segments. There's people who are primarily driven by purpose and want to experience that in their work, in their buying decisions, et cetera. There are people who are financially motivated primarily, and there are people who are sort of achievement oriented. They want to run with the fast horses. And it's not that any individual or buyer or anyone is one of those three things. We are all of those things. I'm very motivated by money, but which one of these things do you have the most? And the research about purpose basically says that when it comes to employees, about 37% of people are oriented to value purpose the most. So, and actually you can ask questions like things like, hey, would you trade off any of your salary to do your exact same job but work in a purposeful company? And a kind of cool stat is 49% of people are like, yes, I'd make that investment. But flipping that stat is actually 51% of people wouldn't give one penny to transfer to a work environment that was delivering on a higher level of purpose. So I think the reality is you as a business have to choose who you want to work with. If you're blanketing out there, you're going to resonate very heavily with 37% of the population who are purpose-oriented. But for us at Hireguide, do we care and do we talk about that with our employees? Yes, because we want 100% of the people inside our company to be from that 37% of people out there. So, and I think when it comes to customers as well as a buying decision, you're going to have customers that are going to be oriented around the financial aspect. But if all things are equal between your product and another, and let's be honest, it's pretty hard to differentiate in a market these days, and you have that additional piece, that can be very, very powerful. So,
great.
Yeah.
Adrian, how do you think about your customers as caring about your mission or not?
Yeah, so I think the employees first, and I agree. I think I study 100% of employees care about the mission is a big part of what drives, and that's important because, again, our mission is to make education accessible, and the product is the impact. So to build the best solution possible, you have to be from that 37%, I believe, and I feel very strongly about it. I think the customers is a different thing. I don't necessarily think, we don't start with that in terms of, the first thing that they see, and it depends on the segment. But I'll tell you, for example, we launched our Working Scholars initiatives, which helps working adults earn a degree at no cost. We partner with communities, nonprofit organizations, and it's a really, really big deal. And for them, all of them care about the mission because they are directly benefiting from it, and they being disappointed by the system and by other companies so many times that are not mission-driven and that left them behind, that they care 100%, not just about the degree they're able to earn, but about the fact that it's being put together by a coalition of people, including Study, that are really mission-driven and putting their money, their resources, the execution behind their words, to the point about it's not what you say.
I just don't know if I believe that 37% number. I would love it rerun today and just see what the shift is, because I think times have really changed dramatically. For us, our entire impact strategy has been based on empowering our customers to make the world a better place. Our mission is we believe the world is a better place with more creators in it, and everything we do is giving them more resources, more support to shift hearts and minds with the stories, the games, and everything that they publish. So it's central to us. One last closing point is that on a daily basis now, as a supplier to our customers, we are getting requirements to align with their sustainability and impact goals as well. So if you're not thinking about your customers caring, I do feel like that tide is going to continue to shift more and more to them caring deeply about your impact.
Can we push in for a second there, Jessica? Because I actually think it's sort of Unity, I think people think of as like, listen, I got to build a game. You're the engine, right? That's the problem that you're solving. So how does mission correlate to that? Because a bunch of stuff will also get built that maybe it's aligned with your mission, maybe it's not. How do you think about those tensions with your customers?
Yeah, so I think the game was sort of this is the problem I need to solve 10 years ago. The problem they need to solve today is I need to create a solution or a story or a game still that is going to reach the masses and be able to solve problems and shift how they're thinking about the world. So almost all of these developers and creators, and I'm sure you know this from your platform, are the 37, which I think is now the 80%, like very purpose-driven in the world that they're trying to change. And so they want support to be able to reach as broad of an audience, as high a quality of experience as possible to tell their story. And I don't think if you're, sort of further down in the viability of a customer, the mission-driven may be as important. But when we are like the lifeblood of that customer's economic and ideological success, it's critical that we're as mission-driven as they are.
Great. And Julio?
Yeah. In our case, it's a good question because I don't think our customers connect with the mission if you ask them, but they connect with our values. And our values are behind our mission. It's like when you find another human being. At the end, a company is also a person, at least from a legal perspective. I mean, you might don't have the same mission in life, But when you connect, it's when you connect through the values. And that's what I think it's what's going on.
What values do you think manifest in, I mean, so if you haven't used Domestika, I'll just brag for a second. I'm a customer, and I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful product. And the videos are just extraordinary in the way that they're crafted. What values do you think your customers are connecting with, that are connecting them through then to the mission?
I mean, they recognize a way of understanding life, purpose in life. I mean, and the joy of create. And connect with another human being through that process. They find meaning through those processes. I think they build their own identity in that context as well. So that's what they find in Domestika. They find a way to express themselves, and they find people who are like them.
Got it. Let me ask a slightly different question on this front. So I have a theory that I think is probably borne out in many ways, that the mission of your organization may all be fine and good, and everyone has a mission statement, and nobody knows what the mission statement of the organization is except the people who are like writing it, and that your mission actually renders through stories that you tell inside the organization. Is there within your organizations, are there stories that get told again and again to help keep the employees on track with mission, or that help you orient to which customer is your best customer? Does anyone want to share one of those?
For us, there are actually two levels of storytelling. And one is really keeping an eye on the heroes, who are our students, who are working against all odds to graduate and to make progress and achieve in their lives.
Do you call them heroes internally?
Yes, we do. We have a student hero scholarship program. We have a college grit program where we're honoring students who are kind of against all odds, making progress. So yeah, we do.
So if you call your student a hero, you're like signaling pretty clearly internally in the organization, hey, this is our mission. We support these people.
Yeah, and we try to share those stories and honor those students, on social media, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a bit of a communication strategy. But the other story that we're telling all the time, and this is to Julio's point. We are really, really committed to a set of values. That it influences how we interview people, it influences how we review people, it influences how we perceive people within the company, and it influences companies that we seek to acquire. We're looking for values-driven, values-aligned kinds of companies. So
can I push in there? Like, what does that mean, values-aligned? Because these are the terms that I want to keep always pulling the skins off of.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be like, oh, I kind of like you. I feel like there's a good vibe here. But I think it's also about, what choices will you make as a company? Will you make choices that are not always totally bottom line driven, but are doing the right thing and moving the ball forward for your consumers in a way that makes a difference? So, I think it's about the kind of choices that people make and the kind of people that you have around you that see the world the same way and are willing to make some sacrifices in order to build a stronger foundation that ultimately has impact. And, it's a little bit, in some ways, I think, playing the long game instead of the short, immediate results game.
Got it. Any other stories that get told in your organization? Go ahead, Jessica's first, and then Adrian.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the stories for us are happening almost daily, and the ones that we love to tell the most are the ones that are focusing on our employees and our creators going against all odds to empower creators. Last summer, as I think everybody knows, the challenge in Afghanistan was enormous and continues to be terrible. And we had a coding school in Afghanistan that we'd been supporting for 6 years, a women's coding school that was shut down immediately. And there was cries for help and support to just do something for these women. And a small group of employees, actually 80 employees, banded together to determine how they could move these women and their families out of Afghanistan, emigrate them to Europe, and then eventually hire them at Unity, which happened about a month and a half ago that they started full time. And so I just think it's a applause to those amazing employees. A few of them in the room right now. But I think the key here is that, there's no barrier that holds them back in being able to, again, empower creators to make the world a better place.
That's such a powerful story, right? Because it of course, it's magically touching, or not magically, but it's deeply touching lives that really needed help. But it's also signaling to the whole organization and the customer base, hey, you're empowered to go get stuff done, right? And that's probably part of your mission as well. So I think stories are the currency of companies in many ways, right? And if you're a mission-driven company, you're sort of saying our story is a driver for us. So watching those stories is so important. Adrian, you had a story you wanted to share.
Yes, and I think interesting for us, we tell the stories more the employees experience it on a constant basis, and that experiences they sort of tell to each other. When we had our first graduation for working scholars, it was crazy. I saw engineers that I've never seen show very little emotion, crying when they saw there was a single mom, Maria, who was graduating at the same time as her daughter because she couldn't finish school, had her kids, was a single parent, and they were, 50 Marias that were graduating that day, and the emotion in the room was palpable. You couldn't help it but get emotional. And then every year when we had graduation, you see different employees have that same reaction. So they tell the story, but also they're experiencing it, and it's very, very personal, the way that it comes to life.
Yeah, this idea of stories is very important, actions and not ads. So doing this purpose at work studies, we studied Airbnb and what was happening there. Their mission is to create belonging everywhere. But the way that they bring that to life is that they practice this value of being a great host. So the day that I showed up to do an interview with that organization, you got to the front desk, somebody welcomed you very nicely, brought you to your room, and I said, oh, this receptionist is like fantastic. And they said, oh, that's not a receptionist. Actually, we rotate out that role of welcoming people and being a great host across the company. Or Patagonia, for example, will bail people out of jail for activism-related incarceration and create experiences where you're going out and doing those things together. Kiva has a program where they send people to experience firsthand directly the impact that they have and then bring those stories back every week to the all hands so that those stories are being spoken about week after week after week, because their observation is it's very easy for an engineer to join a purpose-driven company and then just look at code all day. And that's not why they're there. So they had to make very active. At Hireguide, we really believe that fair interviews should be accessible to everyone. And so we go out of our way to subsidize that for small businesses that are doing 56% of all professional hires. And we want them to have access to that technology too, to have an impact. So if anyone is a small business in here who wants to have a platform to do less bias and more effective hiring, come see me afterwards, and that'll be a story that I'll tell at the next All Hands.
That was mission and sales and discount all at the same time. That was like very, very well played.
Yes.
Julio, I want to come to you on the same question in a second, but I also want to say for everyone who's in the room, how many of you who are in the room right now are at a company that you think of as being mission-driven or trying to become more mission-driven? And by show of hands, how many of you have clarity as to what story you want your employees to be telling about that mission? I think about half. I really encourage you to think about this one, and I really encourage you to go and ask your employees sort of probing and open-ended questions about the stories they tell. And I'll share a couple things that I found useful at Teachers Pay Teachers when I was running that company on this front as well. One of them is I would say, generally to sort of a newer employee, hey, as a newer employee of our company, what would you tell an even newer employee you needed to be successful at our company? And through that, I would find like, oh, here's where we're not mission-driven anymore. Here's where we have some work to do. Or here's something really great that's happening that we want to elevate. And I think about us as leaders as being the elevators of those stories. Elevators not like in a building, but those who elevate. You could be an elevator in a building if you wanted. That would be weird. Julio, any stories that get told? You have about 800 employees spread across the globe. And by the way, all this has gotten harder in COVID because all of our employees are all across the globe now. What stories do you want your employees telling to sort of land that mission point?
Yeah, yeah, of course. We have many, many stories. Because we are big, we have millions of customers around the world, and because of the nature of our product, we have many of them, even in Ukraine. We get them. But that's one thing that we do. We try to share those kind of message when they get to the company. But for example, like, as giving you another example. One thing we do in Slack is one of the terms, the words that shows up in Twitter most commonly next to the brand, to Domestika, is the word happiness, happy, or maybe felicidad in Spanish, or feliz. So because people feels joy and express, I'm very happy. I'm just got this course, or I'm doing this course. This is the project I'm doing. So what we did is we built, through an IPA or something like that. So every time we have a channel in Slack that every time in any social media it shows the word Domestika and happiness, it's published in the
You can
Slack
test this
channel-
right
in the
now,
Slack
by the
channel.
way, if you want to.
So just ping, ping, and you just see random message, linking happiness and Domestika.
Let's talk about the flip side now of mission. Are there customers you fire because they're not mission aligned? Are there employees that you fire because they're not mission aligned? Are there initiatives you refuse to do because they're not mission aligned? Are there piles of money that you leave on someone else's table because they're not mission aligned? Any specific thoughts on this from anyone? About how because often employees, I think, really, like, that's what you say no to is also what they really pay attention to. Like
100%, 100%. I would say in the decades that I worked for Oprah, there were many, many, many more important times to say no than to say yes. I mean, the most important decisions were the things we chose not to do.
what'd you choose not to do? What did she not, who did she not want to interview?
It's really more about sponsorship and things like that.
Oh, okay.
Right? So-
God, it was going to get good in here
a little
for a
less
minute.
sexy, sorry. Sorry about that. But you're right. I think that, there is a level of commitment to outcomes for people, or experiences for people that are not driven by the bottom line, that you have to have a certain level of confidence, I think, as an employee to say, I can do this, I can make this kind of decision, and leadership in my company is going to support me. And I think that is what pivotal in defining a culture that is more mission-driven and more purpose-driven than just purely bottom-line driven.
Anyone? Yeah, go ahead, Jessica. Yeah.
Yeah, we have two examples, and this is the hardest part, I think, of our work. One is just with the military globally. Unity has a lot of simulations and artificial intelligence that's used on our platform. And so really, we have a strong customer voice that wants us to never work with any military, period. And when you look at a lot of these deals that come through, you realize that some of the simulation is life-saving simulations and training so that there's less casualties. And so we've set up a team, an advisory team that looks at these on a deal-by-deal basis and then provides a recommendation. And it's totally imperfect, but it's sort of our best attempt to try and weed through this. Second real-world example is, daily right now with the Ukraine and Russia. I'm sure most of you know, some of the world's greatest tech talent is in Russia and the Ukraine. And there's obviously the stance that you can take that is anti-Russian. And what we've chosen to do is to take a pro-Ukraine stance and look at our user base in Russia and continue supporting them and using the platform because the people don't necessarily represent the government. But again, that's a very fine line in the oligarchs that own the companies and where the equity is. So all that to say, I think it's a continuous work in progress and very unclear part of our work.
Are you getting? That's a really important issue, by the way, because there is this. I mean, what's going on is horrifying. I can't believe that in this day and age we're watching this happen again. But to your point, so many people in Russia are really stuck in a middle ground as well. So how do you explain to your customer base, if you're doing any business in Russia, sort of how you thread that needle?
Well, first of all, we follow the sanctions no matter what. So you have to follow legally, that's our, around who we should not be working with. And that is changing every day around what that list is. And so we're following that. But in addition to that, many of, again, these creatives and developers are very anti what's happening in their own country. And so we have continued to just keep the license working and allowing them to continue doing business. I mean, it's a significant amount. It's a couple 100,000 developers.
Anyone? Go ahead. You were going to say something, and then
we have a very, 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 very teeny little piece of our business that's in Russia, but we made the same decision as we don't want to penalize students in Russia and not give them access to what we're providing. And whatever, it's really teeny and minimal, but it's worth thinking about, and we did. And what we said is, okay, if we're making any money in Russia at all, we're going to donate that to Ukrainian causes. So, how can we kind of thread that needle and do the right thing for students, which is really our primary mission, but also do the right thing in this moment.
Okay, so we have time for one more question before final thoughts, and here's my question. Okay, we're all you're mission driven, you're all trying to do the right thing in the world, so your competitors must also be your friends, right? You must, because you're all trying to just accomplish a mission, so what does it matter who wins, right?
Actually, in some ways, yeah, probably right. Probably right. And in some ways, you know, I think the measure of those competitors is how true are they to their missions, and how true are they to serving their customers the same way we believe we are, and that ought to be part of the competition.
By the way, the competitors are about to speak to each other, so please listen. Deals get done here. You never know what's going to happen.
We're friends.
We're very good friends. Now, I think I go further. I think it's not just competitors, and I totally agree it's about the values and do they follow through, or are they just talking? But I think it's all organizations, right? If you think about the work we do, we started an initiative, Keys to the Classroom, to help with not just the teacher shortage, but the diversity in the pipeline, which is a huge, huge problem. For example, Latinos are 25% of the students and only 8% of the teachers, and less than single digit, 2% of the administrators. And we're working on that, but it's a coalition effort. You can't do it alone. And it doesn't matter if it's competitors, government organizations, nonprofits that are trying to serve. We're trying to bring all of them together to make it happen. So yeah, I think they're all your friends, as long as the values and the follow-through is there. If it's not, they're not my friend, but it doesn't matter if they're a competitor or a nonprofit. They're just wasting space and making noise without really helping at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think none of us are playing in a zero-sum game. We're all working to create innovation in similar categories, and so I don't think that it's. I think collaborating with our competitors, which we do regularly. Our biggest competitor is probably who most of your kids are playing video games on right now. They raised $100 million almost for Ukraine in their promotion, and the CEO is the first to say they're probably using Unity more than they are Unreal to build their games internally. So I think it's just how you grow the innovation together.
Yeah, I think if you reflect on the missions that you have for your organizations, I'm willing to bet that they're pretty lofty. And you're not going to be able to achieve that on your own. So you do have to think about the rising tide. If you're actually trying to solve that problem, that's going to happen in an ecosystem, and there are all sorts of unexpected allies.
Julio, are your competitors your friends?
I mean, the answer should be, like you said before, about values, because we have competitors we love, and we have competitors that we hate. So we gotta be a reason because of that.
Who do you hate, Julio?
You now.
I set myself up, but it was good. He followed it through. That was great. We'll be playing later on in Vegas, so you can. That's great. Any other thoughts about this? Because something that we say at GSV Ventures, I mean, when I'm talking to companies is, whether ultimately if they're mission-driven companies that we think are doing well in the world, I say, listen, if we can be your capital partner, that's great. But I want to support you if what you're doing is important regardless, right? And I think that's sort of the ethos of this whole industry, which I do think is a distinguishing factor. I think if the majority of the companies that are in these rooms that are trying to do good in the world could be successful, I mean, we are trying to lift people, and I think that heartens me every day. I suspect that's not true in the fast food industry. I don't know. Maybe it is, but it feels great to be in an industry where that is something that we are trying to accomplish. So we only have a few more minutes left, and we now know that people in the room are thinking about their mission. You're thinking about your stories. You're thinking about how you want to elevate. And these are 5 companies that are both successful and on their way to greater success in this category. So let me ask you, maybe starting with you, Scott, sort of parting words on creating a mission-driven brand, holding the North Star, or whatever else you want us to take away. It's room for one more sales pitch.
Makes sense. I wanted to also comment on the challenge to the 37% stat, and also share something that's.
By the way, didn't you, Scott, feel like we all worked for Jessica for just a minute there? She was like, "I want you to rerun those numbers." I was like,
yeah.
I was immediately like, "Where's my spreadsheet? I'm on it."
I did. I went into my mind palace. I was, and I reran the numbers. And the truth is, which is really exciting for this room, is that again, it's a segmentation. It's 37% across all employees, but there are 3 industries that are the highest in terms of disproportionate amount of purpose-driven professionals. And topping that list is not-for-profit, so that's not quite so surprising. But second is around education and educators. Entrepreneurs is the third, and I think a lot of these organizations in this room have that DNA. So we are likely, as a group, way over-indexed, and so congratulations on that, and keep doing what you're doing. I think as parting words, I would say, when it comes to a mission-driven brand, it's a bit woo-woo, but it's a little bit about a mindset. So are you using your voice to describe the what or the why? Do you have a point of differentiation? So I want to tell you that we're the fastest or this, or a point of view. We want to tell you that we believe that everyone should have access to education. Do we think of our customers as customers or as advocates? Are we building brand loyalty or are we building brand love? Are we employing employees or missionaries? So these different mindsets about how all this shows up with the underlying intention of what you do with your brand voice will make you a mission-driven brand.
My mic was taken away. He says it's the battery. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
This isn't a sales pitch, but I do think I think really great what you just said. But I also think that fundamentally, there's something about building any brand, but specifically building a brand that's mission and wants to have meaning is listen, be willing to tell the truth, hear the truth and tell the truth, and have the humility to know that you can't do it alone. So who do you partner with? Who do you choose to have around you, whether it's your employees or the people you do business with and partner with? I think those are great principles for any marketer, for any brand builder, but specifically in this kind of world. They're just human values that matter and are more authentic.
Julio, parting words.
Yeah, I will recommend, basically, if you want to build a mission-driven brand, is to go deep. To really go to the core, to really try to understand yourself and your company very, very profound. Because it's very easy to create like a fake layer and try to build over there, but it never works. So it gotta be true.
Adrian.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I go back to what I said at the beginning, right? The genesis of the company being really rooted in the values and why do you even care about that why, right? And that's going to be the biggest driver, and then the product becomes the impact. But the other thing that we talked about quite a bit is make sure it's alive every single day, especially as the company scale. We've been doing this for 20 years. We have 30 million learners and educators on the platform, and I can't do it. The exec team can't do it. It's those experiences, those stories we were talking about. They need to happen, and they need to happen purposefully, intentfully, and on their own organically, and then that will spread across the company and the customers and those you're helping. And that is really what's going to take the mission and deliver the impact at scale, if that's what you're trying to do.
Jessica.
I just want to thank Scott for rerunning those numbers for us on the fly. Building on Julio's comment, tying it to incentives, and when you're dissecting every part of your business, every single function has an impact goal. So for example, Melissa in the back of the room runs our Future Creator business, and her goal is not just the exponential growth in future creators, it's literally the diversity of those creators. Jasmine is releasing our ESG report in 2 weeks. So her KPIs are all about how many of our social impact creators come from underrepresented communities, and then that ESG report not just reaching shareholders, but reaching diverse communities too. So, and then all of our comp as executives for the first time this year is tied entirely to our impact goals as well as our business goals.
Wow. You can't just drop the mic and walk on that one. You got to tell us more. Tell us how that comp structure is working.
Yeah, so...
you don't have to tell us how much you're making. Although, if you want to.
Yeah, so all of our, our comp structure is base, bonus, equity. So bonus and equity has always been tied to our business KPIs, and now it's tied to both business and our impact KPIs. And really, like the team that gets in front of us all the time and thinks that we're not moving fast enough is our finance and accounting teams. Our CFO is like, we've got to change this supply chain ASAP. You guys aren't working fast enough with us.
That's amazing, you know, and it's a great way for us to start to wrap this up, because it comes back to this question of story. That's a story that I will be retelling today, to hear that that's how Unity is treating this question so seriously. Probably it will travel here, and I'm sure your employees are thinking about it too, right? And the fact that your finance team is saying, like, you know, hey, we're on this. I mean, it's really landing through the organization. So I want to thank everyone for taking time to think about mission with us. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful rest of your conference. And I hope we all leave here energized and ready to sort of do great things in the world. So thank you. Thanks to our great panelists.